The one game I was crazy hyped for in January 2025 was Citizen Sleeper 2, the sequel to the indie darling that was a futuristic cyberpunk tabletop-style dice-throwing RPG. Citizen Sleeper could be viewed as a more interactive ebook than a game, but I played it more like a D&D tabletop. While the simple mechanics of the game could be a downer for some, its strengths lay in its amazing writing, realistic characters, and a lo-fi soundtrack that is so good it still gets a regular rotation in my car. I was pumped to dive into the sequel, but I was also worried that it might end up suffering from sequelitis and fail to live up to the original. Citizen Sleeper 2 Starwood Vector, like the original, follows the adventures of a sleeper, an android that has the consciousness of a human downloaded into its frame. Often used as slave labor force, sleepers lead a pretty crappy existence until they're able to escape their slave master captors. This time we play as a different sleeper to the individual in the original game, so you don't necessarily need to have played the first game to enjoy this one. Having said that, there are a few returning characters, so you'll likely get a little more out of the story and the interactions if you have played the original. So when the game begins, we've successfully escaped our captivity with a guy named Seraphin. Apparently we share a little history, but unfortunately in our escape our character sustains some damage and has some memory loss. We're now on the run from Lane, our previous owner and shady business guy, who seems very keen to get us back for reasons we don't yet understand. We joined forces with Seraphin to get as far away from Lane as possible while trying to earn enough of a wage to keep our heads above water. Along the way we cross paths with hackers, mechanics, and other lost souls who can potentially join our party. To scrape enough chits together to afford a meal and to maintain our ship, there are odd jobs and contracts to find. So long as we keep moving, we can keep Lane guessing as to our whereabouts. I really liked the freedom offered in Sleeper 2. It felt like a natural progression from the first game being on one space station to now being able to travel across the entire belt. There's more reasons to do odd jobs on the bigger stations, so you can afford the fuel and the supplies your ship needs to travel to the next one and pick up more contracts. These will have you scouting an asteroid dig site, extracting data from a derelict rig, or even scavenging resources from an old bunker. It's amazing to think how invested I got in my crew and these adventures, when really at the heart of it, it's just a wall of text. But it's an exceedingly well-crafted wall of text. The whole game is pretty much a text adventure with pictures in the background, so if you find it tiresome to read a fair bit, you might struggle with this series of games. I did read most of it, but I'll admit to skimming some of the lengthier sections to get to the point. Those big plot points were well earned. The story is a big part of why I love this series, and it's no different in Sleeper 2. It's an exploration of the human condition set in the far future, focusing on a whole bunch of people who've been handed a pretty shitty deal. Our ship of collected crew become really close over the course of the game, and it's nice to see them interact with each other during missions. Most of the crew I encountered have at least some kind of character arc, and it was really satisfying being able to take part in shaping those stories. These characters feel so real, mainly I think because of their dialogue. The responses feel natural, grounded, and solidly based in this world. You can't help but think, yeah, I'd respond the same way if I was in your shoes. Towards the climax of the game, I thought I'd made the wrong choice and led one of my crewmates into a trap, likely killing them. It made me realise how much I'd enjoyed spending time with this little space family. Too many times I was up at night into the wee hours just wanting to see the next plot point, and it's a testament to how good this story is, particularly given how simple the gameplay mechanics are in the game. I finished the game's story in just about 10 hours while doing the majority of side quests. If you're a completionist and you want all the achievements, I'd imagine it would take somewhere in the realms of maybe 15 to 20 hours total. Like a lot of tabletops, our gameplay is at the mercy of the dice rolls. Each day, or cycle as they call it in the game, you roll 5 dice. You can then choose how best to use those dice rolls in the varying activities, ideally playing to your strengths. Take a shift doing repairs, or sorting, or physical labour for cash, or work towards your own goals. How you spend your dice roll is the crux of the gameplay. Higher dice rolls give you more likelihood of success, and lower dice rolls higher likelihood of a bad outcome, which could cost either energy or stress. We start the game by selecting game difficulty and a class: machinist, operator, or extractor. Each has a different proficiency level in the 5 skills the game utilises: engineer, interface, endure, intuit, and engage. Or what I came to think of them as mechanics, hacking, constitution, wisdom, and physicality. Different to the first game though, while each class has their advantages in some skills, they also have a skill that they flat out cannot do and cannot improve on. In the first game, my machinist leveled up so much that I was not only repairing stuff easily, I was able to intuit and also go toe to toe in physicality. Not so this time. I went with the extractor class, which meant I had no ability to use the intuit skill, but I was quite good at physicality and engaging. The idea is that you fill your crew with others that can make up for your flaws. If you try a dice roll on a lacking skill, you get docked 2 points from your dice roll. A roll of 6 becomes 4, a roll of 3 becomes 1. You'll likely want to avoid these as it's more likely to end in a bad outcome and a potential point of stress. This stress system is new for the sequel. In the previous game, your sleeper was reliant on a synthetic injection of robo-drugs, which was required frequently to temporarily halt a degradation process that was eating away at your shell. If you didn't stop it, you'd lose dice available to roll each day. To replace that system, you now have stress. Pick up too much stress and it can fracture your dice and reduce their health, eventually removing them from your play menu altogether. The contracts are where you'll often pick up stress points, as they lock you out from resting in your ship and being able to reset your stress. If your dice rolls fail too many times, you'll quickly start to lose dice. Lose them all, and you can potentially die. Depending on what difficulty you've chosen, death means different things. Safe difficulty will have your character actually unable to die. The story will progress anyway, much like it did in the original game. Risky difficulty will allow the character to die, but instantly be revived by crew. Problem being, each death results in a permanent glitch, a bug in your hardware that increases the likelihood of rolling a glitched dice each day. Glitched dice don't have a number, they allow a 20% chance of a neutral outcome and an 80% chance of a bad outcome, so not great. Finally, dangerous difficulty ramps it up so your character risks permadeath. I played on risky difficulty and I feel like it was a nice balance of pushing forward on story as well as the occasional challenge. It was only slightly more difficult than the first game, which was a good place to be. I like the artistic style of this series. In fact, if you watch my review of the first game, you'll find it was the art that initially attracted me to it. These cool character portraits continue in this sequel, and it's nice to see their return. Where Sleeper 1 was set on a space station called the Eye, Sleeper 2 allows us to travel to so many different systems and space hubs. Most places are a pretty basic compilation of ship remains or small moons, but it's really nice seeing a variety of places. And some of these destinations are kinda gorgeous to explore. Most of the time I felt like I was in a graphic novel making choices on where the story would go next, and that was such a good feeling. The settings menu is pretty absent of graphical options. You'll be able to change the size and speed of fonts, as well as toggle music and sound effect volumes. I think this menu is aimed at an audience playing Sleeper 2 on Steam Deck, which I think would be an excellent place for this game. Not that I expected it, but I didn't experience any bugs or crashes in my game time. There are a few ambient sounds in the game, but they fade into the background more often than not. What I really want to talk about is the soundtrack. My other big love of this series, apart from the story, is the music by Amos Roddy. As I said at the start, I fell in love with the music in the first game, being this cyberpunk, lo-fi ode to the loneliness of space. Thank the glorious purple space gods, Amos is back, baby! In general, Sleeper 2's soundtrack I found to be even more introspective than the first game. A lot of it feels muted, like an audible Gaussian blur has been thrown on top. There's an exploration of discordance in a lot of these earlier tracks, maybe reflecting the Sleeper's internal conflict regarding Lane's sabotage of his internal systems. Collapse has a wonderful noir mystery flavour to it. And I enjoyed Hollow Core because it feels like a musical return to the first game. There were moments of the game that were heightened because of the soundtrack, although I feel like it happened less in this sequel than in the original. I remember specifically the moment on a disused storage facility, discovering a character who I thought was long dead suddenly return. It was fantastic, and it was all aided by the backing track Another Cycle. Overall, I really enjoyed this soundtrack, though perhaps not as much as the original. I can't really better describe it apart from the fact that I can clearly recall more than a handful of tunes in my head from Sleeper 1 soundtrack, and despite listening to Sleeper 2 soundtrack in my car all week, I'm struggling to remember that many. Citizen Sleeper 2 carries on the tradition of excellent storytelling accompanied by a great soundtrack. What it lacks in gameplay mechanic excitement, it makes up for in character stories and world building. If you're not into reading a lot of text, it's going to be difficult to get into, but if you're willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, you'll find one of the best futuristic cyberpunk adventures around.